This is Weirdly Enough, your regular podcast for strange stories and amazing facts, delivered straight to your favorite podcast directory and at weirdlyenough.com. Now, here are your hosts, Andy and Len.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Weirdly Enough podcast. I'm Andy Kane. I'm joined with Len Johnson. How are things today with you, sir?
Not too bad. I'm just recovering from a couple of bombshells from last week.
Okay.
Namely that gallow is not actually a word.
Yeah, it's jail.
And the other one was that there's always been a male rare of the year. I just assumed it was some sort of dreadful sexist one.
No, of course not. No, all very very equal here.
Right, okay.
Anyway, we're going to move on, and this week we're going to be looking at ancient aliens.
It's also a concept known as ancient astronauts.
Ancient astronauts.
And I actually slightly prefer calling it ancient astronauts because it's not to be confused with a TV series called Ancient Aliens.
Yeah.
That is about that topic. Now, basically, that's
astronauts. Then we'll call it. Yes, okay.
It's a thing that's been on the go, really since the 1960s, 1970s, with Eric von Daniken was the first person that kind of put us across, and it's come up in popular culture. Like if you remember 2001: A Space Odyssey, it's the idea that Earth was visited thousands and millions of years ago, and there's different schools of thought. Some of these proponents would say, aliens are the source of all human culture. Other people say that we were guided, and this idea in 2001 where you've got these monoliths.
Yeah,
they're like observing and kind of pushing humanity along at different stages.
Maybe we're all aliens. Maybe we all just arrived on Earth millions and millions of years ago, and that theory has been lost in the mists of time now.
There's weird stuff out there, because I was like poking around the internet as you do, doing a bit of research. And again, this is one of these things that you look into and it turns out to be a vast topic in itself. I mean, the idea, the Ancient Aliens series itself, it's presented by this guy called Giorgio A. Tsoukalos.
He's the guy I always think about,
crazy hair.
The crazy hair guy.
And he is...
There's a lot of memes of him, just, he's a meme,
He's like a bit of a meme, so you could probably do... a topic just on the series of Ancient Aliens, but he takes it's not like, I mean, in this approach in this podcast we're like kind of take it or leave it.
Okay.
Whereas your man Giorgio, he's very credulous.
You're shouting too much into it.
Shouting too much. I'm getting
close.
It's this topic's so exciting. I
know.
Yes, he's very credulous because it's this whole joke and this meme that it's the aliens, everyone's the aliens, and he doesn't, he sort of takes everything on board, But yes, there's
been 20 series of that. I think it's on the History Channel made.
I mean, there's conferences and people love the whole concept,
But then those History Channels and National Geographic shows and all. They make a lot of series about it. There's one like The Curse of Oak Island or something.
Yes, yeah.
And there's series after series. Just get on with it.
There's certain things when it comes to history that people always like. People always like Hitler.
Yeah.
And the Nazis. If you stick something
Sharks
about...
and Hitler as...
If you stick anything about the Nazis on, everyone loves it. Not so much, like the Boer War or anything like that. So it's probably a similar thing to that. But yeah, I mean, anyway, Ancient Aliens, some people think that, again, it ties into what we were saying about the Giant's Ring last week. This idea that, the stones, like Stonehenge, how did they get the stones, to go hundreds of miles? Wasn't the aliens, Now, one of the things that this kind of gets brought into this is the idea of out of place artefacts, which again is something I want to do an episode on in the near future. But it's this idea, when people go down coal mines and they find batteries, that they carbon date and they're like thousands of years old. It's like, well, how did that happen? Sort of way, like I said, Eric von Daniken was the original, the sort of granddaddy of the hypothesis in the mid-60s, and he published Chariots of the Gods in 1968. And according to von Daniken, the certain artifacts require much greater technology than it could have existed at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And he argues that these artifacts were constructed either by the aliens or by humans who were taught this knowledge by the visitors. And he talks about Stonehenge. He talks about, the big Stonehenge in Easter Island, the Great Pyramid of Giza, and the famous Baghdad Battery, which is thousands of years old.
Was that a battery in a mine or something?
No, it was found in some old ruin, and they found basically it was like it could have theoretically have been a battery that worked.
Right.
Again, I'm going to look into that more and out of place artifacts to get the details on it, But a famous example is, did you ever see that one? It's like the lid of a scar. I can't pronounce this, but sarcophagus. How do you pronounce it?
Sarcophagus.
That's the one.
Yes, that's it.
There's a ruler in Mayan times called Pakal the Great.
Okay.
And it was a cover of a sarcophagus, and it famously looks like a little chub controlling a wee spaceship.
Yeah, I have seen that one.
Yeah, that's a famous one.
There's also the Cathedral of Salamanca.
Yes,
with
that's
the
another
astronaut carving. And there's a lot of different old ancient carvings and things that show kind of spacemen, UFOs, and what you would maybe even call greys, those alien heads. But the spaceman on the carving on the cathedral is really a strange looking thing.
And you get strange things, like if you ever see Renaissance paintings or medieval paintings, and you've got strange things floating about in the sky above them, But the thing with the grey aliens is a funny one, because it ties into this idea that possibly they might be demonic entities.
What, the Greys?
The Greys, yeah, because it's like, I've probably mentioned this before, but if you that sort of thing of like Aleister Crowley, whenever he was summoning demons and his, very sinister occultic kind of rites, one of the ones that he summoned was identified themselves as Lamb.
Right, okay.
And if you ever see drawings of Lamb, very sinister. I think it was one that Crowley actually did himself. They look exactly like what you'd say as a grey alien. Okay. Only he saw them as a demon. They didn't see them as an alien.
We talked about Lamb on a previous podcast, wasn't it? What was that? Which podcast was that? So
I can't think. I remember talking about that, but I'm not sure which one. Mm-hmm. But again, Crowley is one that, because I want to do one, has influence on popular culture, specifically rock music. Right, okay. But because, again, Crowley could do hundreds and hundreds of hours about Crowley. It's very rich material, Now, Von Daniken talks about Ezekiel in the Old Testament, Ezekiel's revelation, and Eric Von Daniken interprets this as a detailed description of a landing spacecraft, which is an interesting kind of concept, Another one that he talks about in Chariots of the God is the Nazca lines, which is these kind of really miles long lines in this Nazca desert. I think it's in Peru, I'm not too sure. And he says it's it reminds him of an airfield, and was that used as an air strip, for these aliens, Another guy, he is very prominent, is a guy called Zachariah Sitchin. I think he was a Russian guy, I'm not too sure, but he did a series called The Earth Chronicles, and it began with the 12th planet, and this was about Sitchin's unique interpretation of ancient Sumerian and Middle Eastern texts. And his idea was that the gods of, because Mesopotamia was the oldest civilization, it was older even than the Egyptians, and people talk about that being where civilization all came from in the Middle East. And he talks about his idea that the gods of old Mesopotamia were astronauts from the planet Nibiru, which Sitchin states the Sumerians believed to be a remote 12th planet, where you count the sun, the moon, and Pluto as planets. And this was associated with their god, he was a guy called Marduk. And according to Sitchin, Nibiru continues to orbit our sun on a 3,600-year elongated orbit, so it's due to come back. Now, he looked at all these ancient texts, which is some of the oldest legends known to man, and he says they tell a story that 50 Anunnaki who came from the planet Nibiru came to Earth, and this was approximately 400,000 years ago, so that's before even the Ice Ages. Wow. And what they did was they were coming here to mine raw material, especially gold, so which was very valuable to them and their own planet. They didn't have very many numbers, so they decided to genetically engineer labourers to work their mines, and they experimented with different species until they started experimenting with apes,
Right.
and through that they created Homo sapiens.
Yeah.
So they actually, in his argument, they literally genetically engineered men. Now they were called the Adapa, and that became Adam in later mythology. So it's just this idea that like Adam was like the first man, and he says that the Anunnaki were active in human affairs until their culture was destroyed by catastrophes like the Ice Age and all that sort of thing. There's an interesting one that I hadn't heard of. It's actually quite good. Called it comes from Irish legends, and there's a book that called the Book of Invasions, and it talks about different tribes that came to ancient Ireland.
Yeah.
And some people say that this records the arrival of aliens in spacecraft with cloaking devices, because it's this idea of, I guess, the Tuatha De Danann, which were an ancient tribe that could disguise themselves, that can make themselves invisible.
Okay.
So
right.
people talk about them being was that like maybe ancient aliens that could like make themselves invisible. And there's a text that says they came to Ireland and landed in the mountains of, I'm not sure how it's Conmaicne in Connacht.
Right.
So I'm not sure where that is, but it's a mountain in Connacht anyway. And
Conmaicne.
I think it could be, yeah. And they brought a darkness over the sun for 3 days and 3 nights, which I think is quite an interesting idea, because in all these accounts it's normally sort of normally very kind of exotic cultures, and it's unusual to see one from Ireland.
There's quite a few books have been written actually about mentions of ancient aliens either in the Bible or parallels of saying, could Sodom and Gomorrah have been destroyed by a nuclear attack? Was the angel Gabriel an extraterrestrial? Looking at stories in the Bible and trying to draw parallels to ancient aliens. So there's a few books like that about. One I actually found on when I was searching for it. One on Amazon, called Extraterrestrial Scriptures in the Holy Bible. Look at the price of that. I don't know why that book is.
That is unreal. That is crazy prices. That is unreal. Like.
I don't know. It must be only one copy of this book around.
Are you sure maybe that wasn't a mistake or something?
It was written by Reverend Michael J.S. Carter. So there, I've seen stuff about why books become very highly priced on Amazon. It's to do with algorithms and like competing algorithms that fight against each other in different booksellers.
No, I mean I've now come across some funny ones. I mean I've come across books that were sort of a couple £100. Yeah, I'm like, what's that all about? Like,
I read about it once. I can't remember whose book it was, but it talked about how it might have actually been something on Audible that I listened to, but it was about how algorithms can compete against themselves in real time and eventually push the price of it's mainly with book selling, but push the price of books way up and kind of compete with each other until they crash down again. So
that's very weird. I've never seen one as expensive as that.
But anyway, yes, there are a lot of mentions of it in the Bible, or a lot of people saying that there could be mentions of ancient aliens in the Bible.
And there's strange things, like if you ever see like in the Hindu legends the Bhagavad Gita, there's lots of strange things going on, and like they're basically like, it sounds like descriptions of like nuclear war going on, and like ancient India like thousands of years ago. Now you say the Chariots of the Gods that was written by Eric von Däniken, it sold apparently more than 7 million copies.
Wow.
So, which I didn't realise it sold just as much as that. Ancient Aliens, the series, is presented very straight down the middle as a documentary type thing. Like I said, it has this guy Giorgio Tuscalalos. Now, a guy that comes up quite a bit on Ancient Aliens is David Icke.
Yeah, okay.
Which we will be doing in more detail.
Can we do a whole, weirdly enough, just about David Icke?
Yes, I intend to. Let's see, but I'll give a very brief overview right now. Now, basically, this is a very brief introduction to David Icke because it's a vast conspiracy theory, like, you know.
Yeah.
But basically, David Icke, he believes that an interdimensional race of reptilian beings called the Archons have hijacked the Earth, and they're stopping us from reaching our full potential.
Okay.
And he claims these Archons are the same beings as the Anunnaki.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, these guys mated with human women back in the day and created a sort of elite that they call the Babylonian Brotherhood.
Okay.
That are basically responsible for... It's like a hybrid race of kind of aliens and humans.
Yeah.
And they're basically the secret controllers. They're basically them.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, if things are going wrong in your life, it's them.
It's them. It's
you
them
know?
holding you back, in other words.
And he talks about it's all like ancient kind of bloodlines and things like that. And one of the things is they have a problem because they will kind of shapeshift sometimes into their true alien form or their lizard form, you know. So in order to do that, they need to replenish their bloodlines with kind of humans. Yeah. So that's why, I mean, allegedly, he says the royal family are lizards. Right. So that's why they had to get, you know, like Kate Middleton, because she's of human stock.
Oh, right.
Because
so they need some humans in there too.
So it's basically so they can maintain their human appearance.
Yeah.
Now, David Icke himself has apparently witnessed this happening. Because back in the day, before he went on, when he was still a sports reporter, in the 1980s, he was sharing a green room in the BBC with Edward Heath,
right?
Who allegedly, before Icke's very eyes, in the green room, turned into a lizard for 1 minute.
1 minute? 1 minute?
1 minute, yeah.
Wow,
and then he can't turn back again.
Yeah.
And David Icke was kind of staring at him in horror, and Ted Heath, this is the Prime Minister, well, the ex-Prime Minister at the time, Ted Heath, caught him licking, and he just sort of stared at him. And so his eyes went completely black. Right. And he just felt this kind of wave of evil coming from Ted Heath, and he thought, no, I just...
Yeah, you know, better leave it,
Yeah, but better leave it, yeah. But that was when he was, you know, he was still doing his Ben football reports, right. You know? This was before he went on his, you know, Messiah kind of thing.
Please, let's cover David Icke pretty soon. Yeah,
yes, we definitely will. But basically, now Icke says the reptilian human breeding programs took place 2,000 to 300,000 years ago. Right. And I mean, this is really he's done so many books. I mean, I think the Babylonian Brotherhood is mainly detailed in his book The Biggest Secret. Okay. Now, if you ever see David Icke's books, I mean, they're incredibly long. Like, they're absolute door stops, you know.
Have you ever read one?
I've tried to. It's hard to get into because they're just so long. Yeah. I mean, they're easy enough to read, but just it takes like hours out of your life, like, you know. Now, apparently the Brotherhood, the Babylonian Brotherhood, are descendants of reptilians, and these guys are actually come from the constellation Draco, and they currently, now this ties into the Hollow Earth, they live in caverns underneath the Earth. Right. So I don't know if they're like living in caverns now, and they're maybe somehow transmitting orders to, like, you know, Boris Johnson or whatever. And there's a whole list of people who apparently are of the bloodline, and it's really random people like Chris Christopherson. Right, the country singer, Yeah. And, you know, obviously, like the royal family, Boris Johnson, and people like that, they're all part of the this bloodline. Right. So yeah, but again, it's something we want to go back to because it's quite an interesting one. Yeah. But yes, what was I gonna say? Not quite finished, Joe. But yeah, it's an intriguing idea, but I particularly like the one about all the slabs. An interesting thing, again, there's a lot of historical accounts that are very strange when you look into them. One famous one was the phantom ships that were recorded in the sky in ancient Rome. Yeah. And there's a historian called Livy, who was a very famous historian of the ancient world, who apparently was a bit like in a kind of ancient version of Simon Sharma. Okay. And his writings in Rome include a fascinating account of many prodigies spotted in the year 214 BC, including phantom ships that were apparently seen gleaming in the sky. So this was above the city of Rome.
Yeah.
And there's loads and loads and loads of accounts like that and various mysterious things. Like there's famously, I think it was in the 16th century, there appeared to be like a kind of celestial battle.
Yeah.
In the skies above, like Nuremberg, you know. Now there's an interesting one that I've never come across, where some theorists of the ancient aliens believe that Bigfoot is actually an alien evolutionary experiment that was left on Earth to spy on humanity for the aliens.
Right. Okay.
So I don't know how that would work. So
Yeah.
presumably he's wandering about, sending
Spying,
reports back,
watching,
presumably
yeah.
to Ted Heath and
Yeah.
you know, the Babylonian Brotherhood, like, you know. And others believe that the Loch Ness monster is a creature out of time,
Right.
and it comes in and out between different dimensions, due to cosmic energies and stuff.
Yeah.
It doesn't, you know, you
So
can't.
it's not there all the time. You just
You do kind of get the impression that a lot of these guys are. Put it this way, I would say they're probably not strangers to herbal refreshment.
Okay. Right.
I would say, look, you know, Elon Musk is big into this.
Okay.
And
Surprise.
he got into a bit of a Twitter spat with the Egyptian government over this.
Right.
And basically they invited Elon Musk. I think it all kicked off in 2020 because he has a whole thing that the pyramids were built by aliens. And he sent out a tweet it was on Friday the 31st of July 2020 when he tweeted out, aliens built the pyramids of... And this was retweeted more than 84,000 times.
And the Egyptian government then got a bit upset that
they were a bit annoyed. Apparently, Egypt's international cooperation minister, now it does not. I'm not sure what her name was, but she invited him over to prove, like, you know, we did it.
Yeah,
the Egyptians did it. You know,
Okay.
It wasn't like the aliens, like, you know. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. But I want to go back to David Icke.
Yeah,
Because I'm intrigued.
we'll have
Because
to.
I mean, there's so many accounts of these, you know,
Yeah.
the shapeshifters, like, you know.
I'm just so interested about ancient aliens, about the carvings and things like that, and the fact that you've got little spacemen on the sides of cathedrals. And
How do you explain that? Like
Very
that guy in
odd,
Salamanca, I don't know how you could explain that. Like,
exactly, yeah. Okay, thanks for listening. We'll have a few of our weird shorts up after this. So, have you ever heard of the phenomenon of the king rat?
Yes, 1 in 20 people is naturally dominant, apparently.
No. Sorry, the rat king, not the king rat.
Oh no, because the king rat's a psychological theory
the
of
king
dominance.
rat is, all right, okay.
That's all to do with people in prison and stuff.
Right, okay. No, well, we'll come on to that on a future episode, but this is the Rat King. Have you ever heard of the Rat King?
No, I've not heard the Rat King.
Reports throughout history, and I've seen photos of these things, have mentioned rats in sewers whose tails all become entangled to such an extent that they become one giant seething mass of a rat, and they just all run about as like...
That sounds like stuff of nightmares, to be honest.
You can Google it. It is a thing. But anyway, police in Grand Blanc, or it might be Grand Blanc, Michigan, were called what could be described as a squirrel king. 7 baby squirrels outgrew their nest so quickly that their tails became fused together, and the cops were called out to separate these rodents. All was well in the end, though, and the local PD took to Twitter to say their tails will need a little bit of time to fill in, but they are safe. Great team effort. #squirrel power. And we talked last week about the record-breaking hailstones.
Oh, right, yes,
in the Antipodes. Yeah. Well, this is a record-breaking potato. What do you call the world's biggest potato? What would you call it if you found it? If you had to name it, a human name.
The Great Spud.
Well, no, they've gone with Doug.
Right.
Because you dig a potato.
Oh, yes, yeah.
He weighs in at an astounding 17 pounds. Much bigger than the current record holder, who was only 11 pounds. And a video can be viewed online of Donna and Colin Craig Browns weighing the behemoth in their garage when the vegetable came in at an astounding 7.9 kilos. That's about the same weight as a small dog.
How actually big is the spud though?
It's massive. It's like it's like a foot across. You know, it's outside.
It'd be some out in an hour.
Doug wasn't an easy fella to look after, however, and he started to dry out and lose weight, and he's going a bit pongy. Apparently, he's starting to smell because he's getting like fungus and stuff in his crevices.
What would you do if you had a big spud like that?
Well, I might do what they do. They're amateur brewers,
right?
And they're going to turn them into a nice drop of vodka.
I don't know. I think do you know what be good? You get a good fight of champ out of
Yeah. Well, I'd drive for the vodka. Although I'm not a big vodka drinker, but there you go.
It'd be nice now. I'd wonder now. Big fight of champ, like.
And this was something I was looking at by that really interested me. Virgin births in
like Madonna
in nature. It's a thing, and I never realized until I started looking into this. It can happen. This is a really strange one. Endangered Californian condors have been found to be having virgin births. 2 male chicks hatched in 2001 and 2009 from unfertilized eggs were only related to their mother and no male relatives.
That's really weird, isn't it?
Apparently it's not as uncommon as you might think, and it's called parthenogenesis. Parthenogenesis. It has occurred in Komodo dragons, honeybees, and sharks. But birds, it's more frequent when the females don't have access to males. The mother of these hatchlings, however, was housed with fertile males at the time of reproduction. She just mustn't have liked them very much. And both of the mothers had mothered chicks in the past. Oliver Ryder, who led a study into virgin birth, said these findings now raise questions about whether this might occur undetected in other species.
You see, I don't think we know as much about the natural world as what we think we do.
Yes.
You know?
The bottom of the ocean's a thing that, we know more about space than actually what's down there in the ocean.
Because of the pressure.
Very interesting, yes. For example, one question that has recently been answered, but stumped scientists throughout history, was why does the sea remain at the same salt level, or relatively the same salt level, even though rivers and streams and the land is putting salt into it all the time? Would it not get saltier and saltier and saltier?
Yeah, and why is that? Have they come off of a horizon for that?
It's to do with water vents that take in the salt, and over tens of thousands of years, they clean the water and put fresh water back out again, so that the earth kind of cleans it all. But so it maintains that salt level. So there you go. Okay, well, thank you very much for listening. We'll be back in another week's time with some more new Weirdly Enough stuff.
It's definitely getting weird. I'm getting ideas for this all the time,
Yes, it's getting weird out there. Thanks for listening, folks.
Thanks for listening to Weirdly Enough. Remember to subscribe to get the latest edition as soon as it drops. And don't forget to leave a review. Email us about anything we've discussed or with your own weird tale at podcast@weirdlyenough.com.